Hi, I'm Ayya Yeshe. I'm a Buddhist nun of 17 years. Thank you for choosing my teachings on this platform. So this is part of a 4-week course on meditation and mindfulness, a kind of dipping your toe in the spiritual waters of the present moment. So I'd like to talk on this first session about basic mindfulness and meditation and what the purpose of meditation is. Meditation is one of those words that has so many meanings, and not everyone completely understands what it is, at least in a Buddhist context. So basically meditation is taking out the mental trash, because we have so much input, we live in such a fast-paced world. Meditation is a way for you to come back to your deeper truth, to a place of peace and sanity. You can compare the nature of your mind to like the luminous blue sky, and you can compare your thoughts and emotions to clouds that pass in the sky. As a child, our mind is quite luminous and fresh, and even small things like our mother giving us a cookie make us happy. But when we get older, we have lots of expectations, lots of desires, lots of pressures, and the things that make us happy become, bigger and bigger, and our actual level of satisfaction becomes less and less. And it's like our mind has become filled with too many clouds, and it's been a long time since we saw the fresh moment of the blue sky, of the spaciousness of our own goodness, our basic freedom. So meditation is a way to uncover, to return to your true home, the luminous nature of mind, to let go of the things that no longer serve you, and to recover a sense of sanity and a sense of what is really important to you. So the way we do that is by meditating, if we can, 15 minutes a day or even more. But starting 15 or 20 minutes a day is a good thing. And if you think about it, we wouldn't go too many days without having a shower, or we wouldn't go too many weeks without carrying out the trash. But we never do that for our mind. So how much useless information, past conditioning, internalized negativities and trauma is floating around there that we haven't cleaned out. And because we don't do that, our level of happiness is less than it could be. So meditation frees up the mind. And there are many methods of meditation, but the most basic one, and a really good one to begin with, is the breath, because the breath is a beautiful thing that you carry with you your entire life, and it's always there. You can always return to the present moment with the anchor of your breath. So what we do is we just assume a good posture for meditation, the 7-point posture of the body. So we have our back straight, because then our internal energies can flow freely. And we have our head not too far forward or too far back. We relax our jaw. Our head is balanced nicely on our shoulders. Our eyes are closed or slightly open if you're feeling a bit sleepy. You balance your shoulders. Your hands, you could put them like this, or whatever you're comfortable with. And then ideally you would have a cushion under your buttocks so that it's a little more propped and your knees are going more towards the floor. And then you could have your feet like that, but that's really uncomfortable. So just crossing your legs. And if you're someone who prefers to sit in a chair, that's okay. But sitting in a chair, can mean that our mind tends to wander a little bit more. So it's totally up to you. And just create a nice, sacred, simple, clear space in the corner of your house, which is a place that you come back to touch your basic goodness. And whenever you look at that place where you meditate, that little corner of your house, which is like a shrine, you feel peaceful and you feel good memories. And then, you set a time. If you're a night owl, at night when other people are asleep, or if you're a morning person, in the morning. But just the main thing is make time. Because we make time for hours on Facebook and watching TV, but we don't make time for recovering our own inspiration, for working with our own heart, for cleaning the temple of our perception. And this is really essential for a kind of self-investment for peace and well-being. And that carries through into every other part of your life in terms of more creativity, less stress, more satisfaction, more clarity about the direction of your life, more joy, better relationships, thinking before you speak. It has so many wonderful effects that flow on into our life if we connect with a level of goodness in ourselves. So once we've established a posture and a space of meditation, we just come back to our breath and we place our awareness on the sensation of our breath coming in and out of our nose. And if you're someone who's very distracted, very airy, you could also put your hands on your stomach, your lower stomach, but otherwise just focusing on your breath, closing your eyes. And you could do that for a few minutes and you'll notice that your mind goes here and there. It's natural. It's not easy to train. Your mind is like a little puppy, the puppy doesn't stay on the spot long. But the point is reward it, bring it back to the present moment. Don't judge yourself, but don't get carried away in endless streams of thought, because it's really interesting how we create our lives. You can say we have like different record players, and we have different records like the poor me record and the bad relationship record and the I hate my job record. And we put our attention on that and we play the story again and again and we don't resolve the issue. So meditation is like taking the spindle off so that we have, the record spinning, the thoughts are going around, but we're not tapping into them, we're not buying into them. So there is a bit of space between us and our thoughts, us and our suffering, us and our emotions. And then we start to realize that we actually have a choice about what we rehash in our mind. And we also start to work with deeper emotions instead of just the storyline. We start to work with the pain behind the storyline or the joy. And we can move through those experiences and transform them as a kind of compost for growing the rows of insight more quickly, rather than carrying these things around for many years unresolved, continuing to play out in our reactions. So just coming back to the breath, and your mind probably won't stay for more than a half a minute on the breath, but you just keep coming back. So I invite you now to just pause this video and to meditate on your breath for 15 minutes. Just remember, the mind should be not too tight and not too loose. Okay, so you've just done 15 minutes meditation, or I hope you have. And you might notice, what is the difference in my mind now to what I did 15 minutes ago? You probably find that there is a little bit more peace and well-being. Or you might go, oh my God, I'm a bit crazy. There's just so many thoughts zapping in my head. And that's okay. In meditation, it's not just about feeling bliss. It's a holistic path by which you transform the light and the dark, and you process your experience as a being. And you start to work through emotions, things that happened in the past, but you also get a bigger picture of the wholeness of life and your place in it, and you don't sweat the little stuff. So the way that we apply meditation, we don't want to be too tight, we don't want to be too loose. There's a story about that from the time of the Buddha. There was a monk who was a musician who became a Buddhist monk, and he was very ardent, he was very serious, he was meditating all the time, he was sitting like this really tight, and after a few months, he was really enthusiastic, burning with passion, for freedom. And after a few months, the Buddha came back to the monastery and he saw this monk looking rather depressed and downtrodden, and he didn't seem to be meditating very much. And the Buddha said, what's wrong? What's happened? You were so inspired. And the monk said, well, in the beginning I tried and I tried and I tried, and I just couldn't get anywhere. I didn't feel any deep, profound changes, and I wasn't able to focus. And the Buddha said, so before you ordained, you were a musician, weren't you? How do you get a nice veena, which is like a little stringed instrument, to play well? And the monk said, oh, yes, I remember. Well, if the string is too tight, it will snap. And if it is too loose, it will not play. The Buddha said, just so, my friend, the mind is also like a beautiful instrument by which you can sing your life into being. But if it is too tight in meditation, the mind will snap. If you're pushing yourself too much and holding on too tight, the mind will snap. And if you are not focused enough, not diligent, not awake, not aware, the instrument of your life won't play. Your mind is distracted by dullness or mental wandering. So you need to avoid being too tight in your meditation and too loose, but just in the middle with that good level of tension on awareness, awake, and yet relaxed. So this is the way to follow the middle path in meditation. And you might notice that meditation actually has, a kind of profound flow-on effect in your life. What is that effect? So many people these days talk about mindfulness, mindful wine tasting, mindful interior design, who knows? But actually mindfulness comes from the Buddhist tradition, and it means placing the mind on an object, on a wholesome object with right awareness, in the sense that we give rise to positive mind states and we let go of unwholesome, deluded states. So it's not merely a sense of becoming numb and apathetic and not dealing with our emotional issues, but it is rather a dynamic, loving, kind, we call it kindfulness, awareness that makes us see our own mind states, our own suffering, our own joys, our own luminous, spacious mind, which can create a lot of peace and bliss if you meditate on a regular basis, or if you go to retreats with qualified teachers. But it also should really open our heart and make us see that we are in fact connected to everyone and the world, and that they are like our second self, our second skin. Because if you think about it, everything we have comes from others. Our mother carried us in her womb for 9 long months. It's because of her giving us a body, endangering her life to bring us into the world, that we can see a sunset or fall in love or have our own children. It's because someone first started out by giving us this gift. The food we eat is grown by others. The buildings we live in that keep us warm or out of the cold were built by others. The fact that we have an education, the fact that women have the vote, the fact that children are not working in mines or factories but go to school, the fact that a teacher was patient enough to teach us to read and write, it's all because people lobbied, because all of these things in history have happened to give us these things. And if you see this interbeing, you realize that a sense of gratitude for life, to always see what I have instead of what I'm lacking and that I'm not enough, to live from a place of being in the heart, of like seeing the good, seeing what you do have. Today maybe I don't have the perfect job, but I have enough to eat, I have shelter, I have a friend. So if you live from the place of what you have rather than what you don't have, you'll be more contented, and you'll also feel the well-being and stability necessary to reach for the goals and dreams you have. Another flow-on effect of living with mindfulness, living with present moment awareness, is that we let go of things that no longer serve us, and we uncover a more meaningful, joyful way of life. In the sense, how do we practice mindfulness in daily life? Why is mindfulness so popular? I guess we all need peace And many of us are stressed out and dissatisfied with our lives. And we do have this kind of FOMO, this fear of missing out. So we try and pack as much as possible into our life. But if you're always, like if you're never really coming home to yourself, if you're never touching the miracle of life as it's unfolding in the present moment, and you're always just kind of thinking of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, when do you actually arrive and enjoy your life? Because this is it. This is not a dress rehearsal. And if you don't know how to take care of your mind, your body, your heart in this moment for happiness, if you don't take care of happiness in this moment, how will the next moment be happy? Happiness, we grow up thinking happiness is in the future. You know, when we finally get our life together, we'll be happy at some moment in the future. And then we arrive at a certain age and we realize most of our good years are behind us. So we start looking back and we say, when I was younger, I was happy, then, before, either chasing the future or running after the past. And life is only happening in the present moment. You have an appointment with life. It's waiting for you to turn up, because this is it. You just don't know when death will happen. And that's not meant to be a really negative thing. That's just meant to be an empowering thing for you to uncover more joy and to not delay in things that make you happy, reaching for your dreams, finding time to do meaningful things, and not wasting time in meaningless things. Because how much time do you have? And sometimes you have to empty out your life and your mind before you can fill it with good things. So this practice of returning to the present moment brings peace and relieves stress. It can help with depression. But you know, you should still seek professional help if you're extremely depressed. So how we carry meditation into daily life is that we make every moment a kind of sacred act. So when you wake up in the morning, normally you're just kind of looking at your phone while you're spooning in your breakfast, and you're not really aware of the fact that today you're alive, that you have good health, and that you have food to eat. So start with a sense of gratitude and eat slowly. Make your meal a meditation. Chew it slowly. Appreciate the goodness. Taste the flavor. And know that what you're putting in your body is good for you. Do one thing at a time and do it well. 100,000 things not done well will not bring you the results you want for a happy life. So, you know, just eat your food, be with your food. Don't watch TV, don't talk, just eat your food. That's the first meditation. And then, you know, you're going to work. So when you drive, just keep your mind in the present moment, following your breath, and drive. And when you're at work, just be in the present moment with your work. And perhaps every 1 hour or half an hour, you could just have your phone chime. There's really nice apps with Tibetan bells. And when you hear that bell, you just come back to the present moment. Every time you hear a bell, even it could be a phone ring that makes you just come back to the present moment. To take 3 deep breaths. Because life is precious. And by coming back to the present moment, you reaffirm what you most deeply value. You reconnect with a sense of the sacred, and you carry that through your day. It's interesting to note that Muslims pray 5 times a day. They connect with God, the sacred, 5 times a day. So, and many religions, you know, like in India, they have a Hindu temple on almost every corner. It's a reminder to come back to the sacred, to touch peace. So worship at the shrine of your own awareness, of your own luminosity. And then there are so many other ways that mindfulness plays into other aspects of our life, you know. Perhaps once a month we could have a day of mindfulness where we set aside busy tasks and we just take time to meditate for a few hours with breaks in between, where we read some spiritual book, where we go for a walk in the national park with mindfulness, following our breath while we're in nature walking. And it's just a day to ourselves, or with a like-minded friend who likes to meditate in silence with you, to deepen your practice of peace. And this practice of peace helps you connect with some goodness, some resilience, some patience, so that the daily aggravations, the daily challenges and stresses of life become much more manageable, and you can put it in perspective. Because after all, if life is changeable and impermanent, things come together, things come apart. For the person who is centered in peace, it's not so much of a problem. It's more an interesting dance. And then your daily meditation is so essential because it kind of plugs you into the infinite again. It's kind of like, what can I say? It's like recharging your battery, really. And if you don't do it, if you just, breathe once an hour for 3 breaths, it doesn't quite have the depth that touching, that peace does. And if 2 weeks a year you can go on retreat and do that meditation, then you get a really deep taste of that kind of peace. And when you have that kind of peace, it doesn't mean you don't have problems or you still don't have pain from the past. But what it means is that you can develop a sense of spaciousness so that you can contain and transform and let go of almost any thing that happens. Because we don't want to do a spiritual bypass. We don't want to use mindfulness to shut down our feelings and not have to deal with the problems of life. We may come to meditation to deal with stress, but ultimately meditation uncovers deeper things. It's an invitation to a radical transformation of the heart. And it's an invitation to connect with the wider society and to carry it forward in terms of generosity and ethical ways of living and making a difference in the world. The whole idea of perhaps teaching a sniper to be a more efficient killer through mindfulness is a kind of contradiction in terms, because mindfulness is about becoming aware, is about doing no harm, is about living with wisdom, living wholesomely. So, kind of reducing mindfulness to just be about being a more efficient worker, so that your boss can say, well, I gave you a mindfulness course, so, the stress is your problem now, and I can work you harder. That's not kindness, and that's not the whole picture of understanding that people need work-life balance, people need a livable income. So there has to be kindfulness in our mindfulness. And if you are a mindfulness teacher, don't just think about, I've got to make some money, this is a craze, so I've got to do this, and this is going to launch me, and it's going to be successful. You really have to do it with the right motivation from the heart to benefit the people that you're trying to help. But mindfulness just brings us back to peace so that we're no longer conditioned by the past or craving for the future, but we're living with freedom in the present. And so many things can be transformed when you find this peace, when you come back to the present moment. There was once a story of 2 Zen monks who were walking through the forest somewhere in Japan, and there was a pretty high river that was flowing quite fast because there'd been some rain. And there was a woman trying to cross the river, but she wasn't having much success. She was a little bit afraid she was going to drown, and she didn't know how to swim. So one of the monks, the older monk, actually offered to carry the woman across the water on his back. And, when he got to the other side, they bowed to each other and they continued on their way. And traditionally, Buddhist monks and nuns are not allowed to touch someone of the opposite gender because they live in celibacy in order to simplify their lives, so they can devote themselves to the spiritual path. And the younger monk was very judgmental of the older monk. He said, "You touched a woman. It's very terrible and inappropriate. What if our abbot had been seen? What if people hear about it? Your reputation will be ruined. People will think you're having an affair, carrying a woman, my goodness. And, the monk was kind of berating the older monk and worrying about it the whole time they were walking through the forest. And finally, the older monk turned to the younger monk and he said, I left that woman on the other side of the river many miles ago, but you are still carrying that woman on your back. So that means, we do that all the time. We have an experience, whether it's pleasurable, whether it's unpleasant, and then we carry it with us, and we keep seeking it out. We don't uncover the freshness and potential of each new moment. We're not fully alive, fully living, because our mind is just caught up in endless distraction, still carrying the woman. We have so many issues, like of the things that we judge ourselves about or that we still hold on to. And it's not that you should just say to someone who's having an emotionally challenging time, let go, because some things take time, even years, to heal. But what we can do is allow those things to settle. You can compare mindfulness and meditation. It's like a jar of dirty water that's always agitated. If you're constantly shaking the jar, the water is always going to be cloudy. So our mind is like that in daily life. We're shaking our mind. We have so much input, relationships, jobs, family, mortgage, rent, and we're never letting our mind settle. And therefore, because our mind is not settled, we can't see the luminous goodness that is already there. If anyone tells you have to go to the Himalayas to find peace and fulfillment, walk away. It's a sham. The peak of inspiration, the peak of enlightenment, the peak of basic goodness is already inside of you. You have everything you need. You just need to let the dust settle and sweep it away, clean the mind. So when the jar, is set down and it sits for a few days, all the dust settles and you see the luminous clarity of the water. So likewise the mind, if you let it settle in its natural state, is luminous, clear, without borders, without gender, without race. And this great peace and love and well-being just kind of wells up, a sense of completeness and a clarity about what is the right thing to do, what is the best way to live. This is the path of meditation. This is the path of mindfulness. It actually brings to mind another story, which is that there was a king and a queen, and they lived together reasonably well. And one day the king, who had a philosophical bent, said to his wife, "What is the most important time? Who is the most important person? And what is the most important thing to do?" And the queen said, "I really don't know. Perhaps we should send out messengers to the wise men and the wise women of the 10 directions and see what they say." So, in ancient India and China, knowledge, spirituality was highly valued. And these people were, the apex of civilization, because they worked for a peace, for a contentment, for a wisdom higher than just their own small sensual pleasures and, their own kind of life, but for the greater good and for a lofty goal of peace and wisdom. So these messages went out, and after a few weeks they came back, and they came back with different answers, like the most important thing is to perhaps find a guru, or the most important thing is to overcome your enemies, or the most important thing is to find love. But none of these really resonated with the king and the queen. And then finally, the oldest and slowest messenger came back. "Wow, I had to climb really high in the Himalayas to find this answer for you, my lord." But finally, he sat down, and after he'd rested a bit, he said, "Well, The most important time cannot be the past, because the past is already gone. And it cannot be the future, because it has not yet come and is unpredictable. The most important time has to be here and now, because if we take care of this moment, if we have peace in this moment, every moment that follows after will be good. If the heart is good, everything is good. The most important person, well, that would be the person that you're with. We can long for people who are not available, but that doesn't really make us happy. What we have to do is love ourselves and the person that we're with. And that way, that kindness will flow on throughout the whole world. Listening in order to understand, not just listening for our chance to speak. And trying to put aside our own judgments and prejudice in order to understand where the other person is coming from, what has led them to become who they are. Because love is understanding, and without understanding there can be no true love. If we do not understand those we claim to love, our love can be like a prison. And the most important thing to do, well, that would be to be kind. Because everybody longs for understanding, love and compassion, and nobody wants to suffer. And everybody is fighting their own hidden battle. So live with compassion. It's good for you and it's good for the world. So these are the reflections I have to offer you on meditation. So you remember, you start 15 minutes a day, you place yourself in the 7-pointed posture, you create a sacred space, and then you carry that mindfulness through to every moment of your life. I talked about the bell that rings on the hour. I talked about the luminous, pure nature of mind. I talked about how having peace can help you find meaning and direction and help you let go of petty difficulties. You know, they're just like waves on the ocean. The ocean is so big that it can contain the waves. So likewise, our mind is vast. You know, if you have, it's a bit like suffering as well. If you have a very small bowl of water and you put a lot of salt in, it's very bitter. You know, so if you have a very small mind and it's very tight, then whatever bad things happen, you will become very bitter and it will be very unbearable. But if you have a calm, spacious, luminous mind or body of water, putting in a few handfuls of salt won't make a difference at all. And this is the way mindfulness creates well-being and happiness. And even when you're not happy, because I think it's important for spiritual teachers to be honest and realistic and authentic. We're not always happy. Happiness comes and goes, you know. But what we can have is peace. What we can have is equanimity and a sense of joy that comes from seeing the arising, abiding and dissolving and not of thoughts and feelings, and not completely getting lost in them. Feeling them, feeling the energy underneath each experience, but not knowing that that is not all there is. You know, not making it concrete, because our thoughts, our speech is how we create life, you know, how we create a framework for existence. And if you think about the power of thoughts and words, can lead to war, can lead to genocide, can also lead to amazing things like human rights, like gender equality, like peace and compassion and love. So knowing that thoughts and feelings are changeable and impermanent gives you a sense of freedom and makes you choose which leads to liberation, which leads to peace, which leads to long-term happiness, and which is unskillful. And then finally, on our talk in mindfulness, we can talk about mindful speech, which is something everybody really needs in their daily life, in their relationships. You know, we have a 50% divorce rate and quite a bit of infidelity within relationships, and a lot of misunderstanding. You know, they say men are from Mars, women are from Venus, bi people are from I don't know, a planet in between? How can we understand each other? How can we resolve our differences? The world is becoming more and more polarized. So the first step is to return to the present moment, because if you have that spacious mind, you can process almost any experience and not allow it to overwhelm you. When we're aiming at not suppressing the emotion, but not acting out. For example, anger. If you just act out of anger in the spur of the moment, it can have really dangerous and destructive consequences. But if you suppress it, it can also have dangerous consequences long term. That's why we embrace our experience, our suffering, our joy, with mindfulness in order to create a space of safety. We call it holding space for our heart. And when you can hold space for your own emotions, your own heart, you can also hold space for others and their suffering and their joy, and not be overwhelmed or carried away. How we do that? You can think of your anger as like a crying baby. A mother knows how to comfort her child. She just holds the baby close, and the warmth of her body, the peace and love of her heart penetrate the baby, and the baby relaxes. And then an experienced mother will know, my baby's hungry, he needs to be burped, he needs to sleep, or he just needs to be hugged, And then once the warmth and love and the needs of the baby are met, the baby can just relax in the arms of the mother. And the mother gets great joy from that. So our mind, our issues, we all have so many crying babies, don't we? The problem is when your baby's crying and my baby's crying and we're both screaming at each other, nothing can get sorted out. Nobody is listening, and everybody is just processing their own pain. And there's a lot of confusion, So we can make time to hold our crying babies and to know what our issues and our triggers are, and to sit with that in meditation. Sit like a mountain. A mountain is not elated when the sun shines resplendently on its snow-capped peaks, nor is it depressed when storms rage. It just is peace. It just holds space. It's just aware. It's the knower. So with our thoughts and feelings, they come and go. Seasons come and go, good, bad. It's okay. It passes. What we once thought was something bad could be an amazing lesson that we had to learn. The loss of one life situation may mean the door opening to a new opportunity. And in terms of mindful speech, listening as much as you speak is very important, and remembering why you are with this person, that you love them, their kindness to you, coming from a sense of gratitude, not expectation. Because if you view your partner as kind of like a love heroin dealer, when the heroin good experience buzz is gone, you'll be out there looking for another dealer, And that's not going to lead to a lasting, fulfilling, deep relationship, because deep relationships go through good and bad periods. So there needs to be some level of persistence, of perseverance, of patience with your loved one. So remember why you're with them, that you love them. One master, Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, he says, write a love letter about all the things why you love your partner or your child, and all the joyful things you've shared with them. And you just put that love letter in a drawer, and when they're giving you grief, you just open the drawer and you look. I remember now, And remember, we always treat guests so well, but we treat our loved ones, we dish out the worst of ourselves to our loved ones, and we show our nice face to the guest. But actually, our loved ones are the most important person to be kind to, and to not take our aggression out on and our irritation out on, because they are only a guest in our life, even if we have a certificate that says we're married for life. We all know how quickly those certificates can go out the window when we're not happy and we're not communicating and we're not connected in the heart. So someone is with you by choice. They're sharing their life with you. They're giving the most precious moments of their life to be with you, to walk on this path. So you have to make it worth their while, hold space for them and try to put the best of yourself there. And it's okay now and then to just say, I'm having a really hard time, But the thing about communication is when there is an issue, a difficulty, to first of all step back and reflect on it yourself. Like how much of this issue is me and how much of it is them? If you just kind of hand the irritation or the frustration back and forth like a ping pong game, it's just going to get faster and faster and more spiral out of control, and you'll say things you regret. So if someone's throwing you a curveball, you're like, okay, I've got this ball. This issue has come up. Is it mine? Is it theirs? What part am I playing in this? Why does this trigger me so much? What do I need here? And then you come back, a few hours or days later, and you say, my dear, when you said that, it really it made me feel this way. And I don't know if that's what you intended. I'm not blaming you. But I'd just like to know, because our relationship is really important to me. So you put something good, something difficult, and then something good again. And try not to say it in a blaming or accusatory way, but rather, when you did this is how I felt. Was I wrong? Did I misunderstand? Is that what you meant? And then, you need to give your partner time to speak, or your child time to speak about the issue and how they feel. And sometimes, it can be quite painful listening to them, especially if it's an issue that's quite, unresolved and deep, that's gone on for a long time. And you listen and you don't interrupt. So if they're a very difficult person, you can just give them 5 or 10 minutes and say, I'm sorry, the time has run out. But you don't keep interrupting them. Give them time to put their side across. And then once they've done that, you let them know that you've heard what they said. And then there might be need for you to go away and think more, because what they've said has changed things or irritated you even more. So you go and do something else, and then you come back to it again. And once again, you're both really willing to compromise, to listen deeply in order to understand, and to not be with someone just because of the things they give you, but rather understanding that love is a mutual exchange of wholeness. It's not like two halves making a whole. It's two whole people sharing their lives to make eternity. And that you have to work on yourself, they have to work on their self. You have to both take responsibility and be prepared to compromise. And, this deep listening, and this, there needs to be a little bit of filtering in terms of not being too aggressive, not swearing, not, saying it in a way that they can understand. And also saying, this is my issue, but this brings it out for me. And that way you can, it's not an easy process. It takes time to invest, but the time spent will lead to a lot more happiness and understanding. And I think this kind of mindful speech, and then in the end, when you have seen what the issue is, you both have to be prepared to change, to do something positive, something wholesome. You may even realize that you have grown apart, and that's okay too, But do be patient, do try to resolve things and grow together, because, the repercussions of a broken family can be not so great for everyone, unless, of course, there's abuse, in which case it's totally understandable to leave. And once the issue has been, okay, I heard what you said, and now I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to try and change this. I'm going to try and not do that because I know it's important to you. I'm going to come at home on time, or, whatever it is. I'm going to try and save more money, or I'm going to make Sundays just for us. I'm going to make more romantic gestures and listen to you more often. So whatever it is, you meet them halfway, as long as they're also reciprocating. And then once the issue is resolved, you agree to not constantly bring it up again, because you've tried to resolve it. So if someone has made a mistake and they've apologized and they've made it clear, I'm going to do these actions and not repeat this, and they're actually doing the thing they need to do to make amends, don't keep bringing up the old issue. In Buddhism we call it putting dry grass over mud. So, in the problems that you have in relationships, or even with your own issues, you get, like in quicksand, you get stuck. And you just keep blaming each other and keep bringing up the old issues. There's no way through it, there's no way to move, you're stuck. So what we try to do is we address the problem, we set a timeline of outcomes of what we're going to do to change it, and then we let the past be the past, and we put dry grass over that and move on, so we can move through that. The only time you bring up the past is if you're saying, this is a recurring problem that hasn't been addressed, or because of this happened, I'm having an issue trusting you, so I need to reestablish our trust. But just constantly throwing someone's past mistakes in their face will not help you move on, and will not help that person feel, they'll always feel shamed and guilty, and those feelings of shame and guilt will kind of poison the relationship. So it's very important to have a big container in your relationship for all of the stuff that happens in life. And that part of that big container is that peace, that mindfulness, that returning to the present moment. And also just letting, like Khalil Gibran says, he says, let the winds of heaven blow between you. So that there is a little, like you're not too close and not too far apart. So that you're both doing your own work, but you're both connecting in, sharing love, investing in the relationship. And, for a spiritual person, for example, someone like me, my relationship is with this inner peace, this coming back to this peace and checking in and maintaining a good connection to that, so that I can then help the world. And you'll find that when you live in the present moment, life becomes a lot more clear and simple and joyful. Like you see the way children live. Children can be also a little spoiled and demanding, but the good side of children is they very much live in the present. We also have to plan for the future. There's nothing wrong with that. And take responsibility and do no harm, to live with ethics. But that freshness of childhood, that returning to the present moment, is something we gain and something we very much need, that mental space. So hopefully our first class has given you some good insights into how to meditate and what spiritual practice means, what the purpose of mindfulness and meditation is, and how to live in the present moment and use mindful speech to improve every aspect of your life, whether it's work, relationships, family, and your connection to higher truth. So thank you, and look forward to seeing you in our next class.